What's up, everyone? This is Guy at the Boomstead, and we're here to show you how to make some sourdough loaves by yourself. Sourdough is amazing, and the stuff you make at your house is way better than what you can get at the store. You need a sourdough starter, which you can buy from us, or you can make on your own. And this is our starter Sammy. After we fed him, he was half full. Now he is bursting out the seams. He is coming out of the jar, and he is ready to be fed. He's ready to be used so we can make our leaven for our doughs. Okay, you use a portion of your sourdough starter so you always have sourdough starter left over. This is us taking a portion of our starter. You only need at least 20 to 30 grams. You could use 50 grams, and then we're going to feed to that our 150 grams and 150 grams, which is going to give us enough leaven for our doughs. I need 200 grams of leaven for our recipe here. Okay, this is based on 1,000 grams of flour, which is your standard baker's recipe. So I have 700 grams of water going in the bowl for our loaves. You're going to take 200 grams of your leaven. You know your leaven is ready if it looks like this and it's bursting out the sides of the jar. Okay, but once you put it into a cup of water or into the water for your mixture, you will see it floating. Okay, if your leaven passes the float test, it is full of gas. It's ready to be used, and it's what's creating the lift and the rise in your bread. Okay, so this is our fed leaven. We're taking 200 grams, we're putting it in 700 grams of water. Your water can be lukewarm, cold, doesn't need to be hot, but the warmer it is, the more active it'll help the bread. If it's a cold day and the water's cold, everything will still happen. It'll just take a little bit more time. Okay, so kind of take that into account when you're making your bread. We use a mixture of red flour and all-purpose flour when we make our bread. We use 850 grams of bread flour, which has a higher protein content. We use 150 grams of all-purpose flour. The all-purpose flour makes a more chewy, soft bread texture, and the bread flour makes a little drier, more open crumb texture. So I like a combination of the two. You can find your own ratio when you start making your own breads more often. This is the one I found I like the most. So after you get your flours weighed out, on your digital scale preferably, you can use a cup or a measuring cup when you make it, but a digital scale will make it far more accurate, especially when you talk about baking. Any baker will tell you just get a digital scale. You can mix all this up by hand, or you can use a KitchenAid mixer like this. They're honestly the same. The KitchenAid, I would say, a little bit easier. You throw in your dough hook, and you're going to turn it on setting 1 or 2 for about 2 minutes. And what you're doing here is just incorporating everything together. You're incorporating the flour, the water, and the sourdough starter, which at that point is just it's just more flour and water. And then once you have it all come together, you're going to take off your dough hook and you're going to let it sit in the bowl for 30 minutes. Okay, this is the autolyse period. It's very important in making a delicious loaf of bread, and basically you're just giving it time for the water to hydrate all the glutens in the bread. Okay, so this is the autolyse period. You can leave it there on the counter covered with a towel, and after 30 minutes, you're going to start prepping your bread. Okay, at this point we add 16 grams of salt and another 50 grams of water, and you're going to use your fingers and kind of poke that salt and water into the dough. You can kind of stretch and fold it, use whatever methods you want. There's all different ways, but you're just trying to incorporate everything together. Okay, you'll see the dough start to kind of change texture. It'll be less shaggy and more shiny and smooth. Okay, and this texture will continue to change over the bulk ferment period where we do our stretch and folds, which happens every half hour. Okay, so right here we're mixing up the salt and water. After you give it a good little mix, you can leave it covered for 30 minutes. Okay, my wife was doing it. I'm just taking over here. This is my little method. I just kind of put my hand underneath the dough and I kind of reach underneath it and like pull it up and flop it down, just creating air and kind of just stretching the dough itself, which is what you're going for. Whatever method you're doing, you're looking to just kind of stretch the dough. Okay, so then once you give it a little stretch, it looks like that, nothing crazy. You're gonna leave it for 30 minutes, and then for every 30 minutes, you're gonna do a stretch and fold. Okay, this creates this would be like keeping it on the dough stand or with the dough hook running. Okay, that you're doing all this with just a minimum amount of effort. So you do this every 30 minutes. Takes about 30 seconds. You take it, you pull it, you stretch it, you fold it over on itself, you rotate the bowl 360 all the way around, and then you're done. Okay, that's all the work it takes. You do that for a half hour, up for an hour, all the way to 3 hours. So 2 to 6 times. And then we're going to get to this point, which is our pre-shaping. Right now you're pre-shaping your dough. I use a little bench scraper is what that tool is called, and I don't use any more flour, okay? So the dough is kind of wet, and it'll be kind of hard to play with, so just be more decisive with your movements. I kind of turn the ball in a circle using the dough hook, or excuse me, the bench scraper, and creating a nice kind of tensioned ball, okay? And then I cover it for 30 minutes, and after that we are ready to make our loaves, okay? We have our proofing baskets there that are covered in flour so we don't stick. My loaf here I turn over, okay, so the top side is down, and now I kind of make a little rectangle shape. There's all sorts of ways to do this. You find whatever way suits you best. I fold it over on thirds on itself, and then the opposite way, thirds on itself again. Got my little loaf here. Kind of shape it up with my bench scraper again, and then the top of my loaf will go into the bottom of the basket face down. That's going to be where it sits. The flour will create these kind of cool circles on the surface when you pour it out the next day. I cover my loaf and put it in the fridge overnight to sit and ferment. Okay, some people you can cook it the same day. You let it sit for another 3 hours or so if you want to do that. Okay, this is the next morning. We have our oven hot, our cast irons already heated at 450. We put our loaf in there, and we put a big score mark. This is after 35 minutes of cooking with the lid on. We take the lid off at another 500 degrees for another 5 to 10 minutes. You get all the color here. It's up to you how much color you want, but you will not overcook the inside of the bread, so don't worry. Our bread looks beautiful here. If you tap on it, it'll feel really hard and overcooked. It's okay. When you knock on the bottom, it should
sound
hear
hollow,
a hollow
so that's your indicator.
sound, knock noise, knock knock. That means ready. Okay, you put your loaf to the side for 30 minutes, let it cool down. It's still cooking internally. They look beautiful. When you enjoy them, cut them open. I love the corners. Enjoy them with some butter and microgreens, and then you're going to put your starter back in the fridge to use it next time, and enjoy your bread. Boom!